I remember getting off shift the next morning and calling my wife, and I'm like, I don't want to scare you or anything, but like jiu-jitsu saved my life last night. If I didn't train, I don't know what would have happened there. It would have been bad. My name's Chris Young, and I work for a local police department, and right now I work patrol.
How did you become interested in jiu-jitsu, and when did you start training?
It started actually after I started law enforcement. So I started my law enforcement career in a local jail and working in the jail, knowing that I eventually wanted to go to patrol and work the streets eventually, but especially due to the dangers that we had inside the jail. A buddy of mine and I just started, thought that it would be very important. I never expected it to get to where it got now. Didn't expect the addiction to take over it like it did. It was one of those things where when I first started, it was like, oh, I'm only gonna do this for like the work side of things. I just want to learn how to arrest people. And now it's like, no, I want to go to every competition I can and do everything that I can.
How has jiu-jitsu specifically influenced or improved your performance as a police officer?
Goodness gracious, I could talk about this forever. I legitimately know multiple scenarios. There's been multiple scenarios in my career where it's saved my life. And I can give examples of those if you want. But yeah, I've been in a lot of different situations, and especially being a smaller guy, I feel like everybody wants to fight the smaller guy, and I seem to be somebody that just gets into crap. So it has absolutely saved my life on multiple occasions.
I know you kind of touched on it, but can you talk about maybe one specific situation?
Yeah, absolutely. The one that comes to mind off the top of my head was I was working night shift, and I don't remember, it was a few years ago, so I'd only been on the streets for a couple of years. And I was patrolling an area that we get a lot of burglaries, like auto burgs and stuff. And I found a dude that I know from previous experience to be a drug user. And as soon as he was strolling through a subdivision that's a pretty nice subdivision in the city on his bike. And he kept trying to duck in and out of cars as I came into the area. And I hit him with a spotlight, and I could see that he had like already sweated out his shorts. And there's no reason this time of year he should have sweated out his shorts. So I was already assuming he was under the influence of methamphetamine. Anyways, I have reason to stop him and detain him. So I do so, or attempt to do so. He takes off on his bike. I end up catching him in a short little distance, and we get into a fight. And during that physical altercation, I end up taking him to the ground pretty quickly and getting his back. And he's trying to claw my eyes and reach and take things off my belt. And the department that I work for, we're still allowed to use carotid, which is a wonderful tool for law enforcement, especially if you're trained properly. And those of us that train jiu-jitsu consistently, it's the best tool you have, in my opinion. So I use carotid from the back, or just a rear naked choke position, put him unconscious, go to put him in handcuffs, which I've done dozens of times probably. He comes back like within 3 or 5 seconds, and the fight's on again. I have to take his back again, and he's still trying to claw at my eyes, trying to take things off my belt, trying to just overpower me in this scenario. So I use carotid again. He goes out again, but at this point, due to we're probably a couple minutes into this fight, the fight ended up being like 3 minutes and like 37 seconds, I think is what it was, of one-on-one the entire time. He goes out again, comes back within seconds, and it's one of those where it's like, okay, I don't know how else I'm gonna control this guy. He's obviously under the influence of a stimulant, and I don't want to say it was a scary feeling, but I've never felt like I literally have to physically dominate this guy the entire time, or he's gonna kill me. Like, no questions, this guy's gonna try to kill me. And so that scenario, I end up staying on his back for the remainder of the time. I end up getting an arm trapped and just a body triangle on that arm with the arm trapped. For the remainder of the time until backup gets there. But yeah, it was 3 minutes and 30 something seconds of just a one-on-one fight. And at the end of that altercation, the only injury or mark that I had on my body was one scratch to the back of my neck. and that is 100% from jiu-jitsu. I remember getting off shift the next morning and calling my wife, and I'm like, I don't want to scare you or anything, but like jiu-jitsu saved my life last night. If I didn't train, I don't know what would have happened there. It would have been bad.
I know you mentioned you were like a smaller guy. What was the size of this guy?
He wasn't, actually, he really wasn't that much bigger than me. I've been in some altercations with guys that have like 60 or 100 pounds on me. This guy was probably 185. So at that point, I was probably 155. So he probably had 30 pounds on me. But just the stimulant and the fact that he did not feel pain at all. Like, you struck this guy, didn't faze him. Like, it was wild. And then grabbing a hold of somebody that sweaty and trying to physically control that guy in that scenario, absolutely. Like, it literally just felt like a jiu-jitsu match, like a no-gi grappling match. Like, I'm just physically controlling this guy, and then he's trying to reach and claw my eyes and take things off my belt. And it was, I don't know how to explain it any other way. Like, it was one of those things that if I didn't train, it would have been bad. It would have been really bad.
In what ways has jiu-jitsu contributed to your personal growth and development?
Oh, that's a great question. I feel like there is, I guess when I first started, a guy explained this to me, that when you go to the gym and work out, like, yeah, it feels great, you get endorphins, like there's just wonderful feelings with it. But when you go to jiu-jitsu, you can't think of anything else but jiu-jitsu. Like, you can't think about the bills or what you have to do at work or anything like that. So it allows you to just have you time. It's almost like being a Christian and a believer. I almost feel like it's somewhat of a spiritual walk as well. So that side of it really allows you to decompress, which in turn makes your family life better. Not only that, like, does it allow me to, like, a safe place to get away and to, like, decompress, especially after work. But I feel like it's also one of those things that, especially at 208, it's a family environment. So my wife is here all the time, my kid's here all the time. Like, he's able to grow up in that. The whole team is a family. That's a wonderful thing. Just those core values, I feel like, make a difference on me personally, and then my family as well.
How do you balance the physical and mental demands of both your job and jiu-jitsu?
I'm not very good at that. That is something that I definitely struggle with. I'm really bad about burning myself out, especially when it comes to, like, comp season and I'm competing a lot. I train too much and I lift too much, and then I try to still be a really good dad and a really good husband. So it's like 4 hours of sleep, and then after a couple months, I'm just trashed. I need to get better at that. I feel like I've done a better job of it recently, but I'm also not competing, so I don't feel like I have to be here 7 days a week. I can be here 4 days a week and it's fine. That's a balance that I still need to figure out, but that's a good problem to have, right? There's a lot of people out there that can't do those things, so it's a blessing.
I know you kind of touched on it a little bit, but can you share your insights on the importance of safety, both on the job and then during jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, absolutely. We can start with, I'll just start with in training, because I feel like it's super important to have good training partners that you can trust, and people that you feel like you can grow and work with. We have a wonderful group here. There's a group of people that I prefer to work with, but we don't really have any bad training partners, which is a huge blessing. That's super important, because if you train long enough, you know you're going to have injuries, and being able to trust your training partners is huge. And then the on-the-job stuff is there's two things that I say I could never be a cop without, and that is Jesus. I couldn't do it without being a believer, and I couldn't do it without jiu-jitsu, just because of the amount of times that it has saved my life, especially with the environment that we have in law enforcement now. Like, I personally, everybody has their own opinion. I don't think strikes are a bad thing. I think there are times where people need to get punched in the face during fights, because it ends things quickly at times, which saves lives. But it looks so much better, and it's so much safer to physically control people in a grappling sense. And if you can do that, you are not only an asset to your team and to your department, but you're not a liability. There are videos all over the place nowadays, especially with the way things are criticized now, of cops not doing a good job of that. Honestly, the department that I work for too, it's a testament to the local jiu-jitsu scene, and really 208, because I think there's probably 90% of us that train here. But I think we did the numbers recently, and I think there's over 30 cops now in my department that train jiu-jitsu. So the fact that people have recognized that, and there's that many people within the department that are realizing like we need to train consistently, just says enough.
And what's the size of your department?
We have about 140 something sworn. So
that's a good number.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's drastically more than anybody else in the Valley, but you can go to any training in the Valley now, and there are multiple cops that train jiu-jitsu.
How has jiu-jitsu training fostered a sense of community and camaraderie among police officers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So going back towards like the 30 dudes that we have, male and female, both sides of it. We have some ladies that train as well, and they're absolute savages. But it's almost like also at the gym, like you have that, it's just something that you have in common. So it's something that you always talk about, or you always do. We have a group of us that actually the instructors at the PD, all of us train jiu-jitsu that teach defensive tactics at our PD. So we consistently train, like we've got a group chat on Instagram where we're always sending videos, and it's just something that we have in common, but we can also do it as something that's fun. And then patrol teams, it's actually really grown and become something that's more frequently. Patrol teams consistently get together and roll, like even the guys that don't consistently train jiu-jitsu once a month get together with their teams in the morning. So it's just one of those things that helps build relationships, and it builds relationships like in difficult times, because there's going to be situations that you're in when you're rolling that are uncomfortable, and when you've got training partners or teammates that you trust, you can get through those, and then it makes the difficult things on the job that much easier.
What advice do you have for others looking to balance a career in law enforcement and with jiu-jitsu?
Train. The number one thing that I would say though, in terms of advice for somebody that's a cop that is also in jiu-jitsu, is try to get your family involved, because the job takes us away from our family enough, not just physically but emotionally, and if it's something that you can do with your family, that's a game changer. Like to be able to have, like, it's important to have date nights outside of the gym as well, but like if your date night is coming to the gym and doing evening class or afternoon class, and then with your wife and your kid, like that is huge. That's one of those things where you get quality time with family, but you also get to train and do something that you love. So that would be one of the number one things I would recommend. And then the second is don't take it too serious. Like this is a marathon. Like enjoy it. Like enjoy all of the bumps in the road. There will be plenty. But those things help us grow mentally, physically, personally as well. You're going to get a lot of personal development from it. And so just utilize that. Enjoy the journey and try to bring your family along with it.
How has jiu-jitsu helped, and we kind of touched on this a little bit too, but how has it helped you stay mentally resilient and focused in high-stress situations?
That, honestly, that's one of the biggest benefits that I've got from jiu-jitsu is there's so many situations on the mat where, like, especially competing, you don't have to compete to get these things. You can get them from daily training, but like, especially from the competition side of it, like you're just in really high stress situations with a lot of adrenaline that you can't get anywhere else. Like no training environment have I got those adrenaline dumps. Only in competition do I get those dumps. And then you get to the job side of it and you go to a call that's whatever it may be, maybe it's a wild call, you get very similar adrenaline dumps. Like, yes, it's a different environment and there's a lot of different senses, but there's also that like survival instinct in a sense that plays a factor that you also get on the job when you get to really high tense situations. And if you've already handled those multiple times in competition, it's really not a huge deal at work. Like you're able to stay cool, calm, and collected in those moments because you've done it 20 or plus times on the mats.
What do you think about the initiative to sponsor first responders for jiu-jitsu training?
Oh, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. I'm super excited about it because I think we've stressed the importance of training, but it should be a requirement in all reality. Like, it's literally saving cops' lives, it's saving citizens' lives, it's saving suspects' lives, like, in all reality. I'm a part of our use of force board, so I do evaluations, and I have seen more scenarios where jiu-jitsu has not only saved cop and citizens' lives, but it saved suspect lives because of the fact that we were able to physically control people and not have to revert to any other means. Those means would have been justified, but because we have cops that train jiu-jitsu and can physically handle themselves and others, we didn't have to, which, again, it saves lives, literally. So the fact that you guys are coming out and you're going to sponsor first responders is huge. Like, that's a wonderful thing, and I'm all on board.
How can sponsorship programs benefit the first responder community?
It makes a big difference. So one thing that is a difficult thing when you're a cop is finding time, and the other is finding a way to put that money away. I would argue that everybody can do it, just based off of the fact that we buy lots of silly things, I think, people do in general. So you've probably got a membership to something that you don't use anyways. Why not save some of that money away, budget it, and put it towards something beneficial like training in a gym? But it takes a lot less stress off of families, as well as cops if they're being sponsored, especially until you get started. Like, I know once you're in it, you're probably not going to quit training, like, in all reality. Like, you're going to train, maybe it might be off and on, but you're going to train forever anyways. So if you can get people in the door, I think that helps make things, it helps change lives in the long term. And I feel like when people see some of the gym numbers, it's like, oh, I can't do that. They can, but the sponsorships help get people in here, and then I think people realize the difference that it makes for you personally as well as career-wise.
What qualities and commitments should applicants highlight in their applications for sponsorship?
Ooh, great question. So if you're wanting a sponsorship, some of the things that you should have highlights. That's a solid question. So if I think about this, if you're wanting a sponsorship, you're going to have to highlight some things that jiu-jitsu is going to do for you career-wise. So I feel like if you're going to complete an application, some of the things you should be talking about are the things that it's going to do for your career and what you do career-wise on the law enforcement side of it. So it might be more applicable for certain situations, but maybe that person, if you have a certain skill set already and you're trying to broaden that, or maybe you teach defensive tactics or teach something at the department that you feel like is going to be made, a huge difference going to be made by jiu-jitsu, you should probably highlight those things because those are going to help with those opportunities.
And any advice for first responders who are considering applying for this opportunity?
Do it. Do it. It's a must. You need to train jiu-jitsu. It could save your life. It could save somebody else's lives. And it's just one of those things that's going to make you better as a person.
And last question, do you have any just final thoughts, messages, anything you'd like to share with the audience regarding the intersection of law enforcement and jiu-jitsu?
They go hand in hand. I think it's a requirement. I think you should train because, like I said, it saves lives. But it's also one of the most exciting, best journeys I've ever taken on in my life. It's so much so that, like I said, I encourage you to bring your family. Try to get your wife, try to get your kids or your husband, whatever, maybe try to get them to train. Mine, when I first started, said she would never train jiu-jitsu. Now she's a savage and she trains with us all the time. So it's one of those things where do it and then try to bring your family along, because there's too many things that we do as cops that kind of exclude our family, and I don't think we do that on purpose. It's just sometimes it's hard to talk about what we see and experience on the job. Make this something that is family oriented, that you do with your family.